It happens on a Tuesday afternoon, or perhaps during a quiet Sunday dinner. The room is familiar. The smell of coffee is in the air. You are sitting in your favorite chair, the one with the soft cushion you bought last autumn to help with your lower back. You are having a conversation with your adult child, and suddenly, the air changes. It isn't a shout. It isn't a scream. It is just a sentence. A collection of words that lands heavy on your chest, making it hard to take a full, deep breath. We spend so much of our lives building a home, building a family, and trying to build a bridge to the people we raised. But sometimes, as we enter our 60s, 70s, and beyond, we realize that the bridge feels shaky. You might be looking at old photo albums from 1985 or 1992, remembering the birthday parties and the scraped knees you bandaged, and you wonder how you got from there to here, to a place where a simple phone call can leave you feeling small. If you have ever hung up the phone and sat in silence for 20 minutes, just staring at the wall, wondering where the connection went, you are in the right place today. We are going to talk about something very important. We are going to talk about protecting your heart. We are going to look at the words that hurt us, not to dwell on the pain, but to find a way to let that pain go, so you can enjoy your morning tea, your garden, and your life with the dignity you deserve. The weight of unspoken debts. Let's start with something that many of us feel but rarely say out loud. It is the feeling of a transaction. The feeling that everything you did, the overtime shifts you worked in your 40s, the vacations you skipped so they could have braces or college tuition, has been forgotten, or worse, twisted. There is a specific kind of phrase that floats around in families. It sounds like, "You owe me this," or "After how I turned out, you need to fix this." It might come up when you are discussing finances. Maybe you are on a fixed income now. You have your budget written down in a notebook on the kitchen counter. You know exactly how much goes to the electric bill, how much for groceries at the local market, and how much is left over for your prescriptions. And then a request comes in. A demand for help, followed by guilt if you say no. It is important to remember the context of your life. Think back to the days when you were younger. You did not have the internet to solve every problem. You figured it out. You worked hard. Maybe you remember driving that old sedan that rattled every time you went over 45 miles per hour, just so you didn't have to spend money on a car payment. You made choices based on love. When an adult child implies that you owe them something now, it creates a heaviness in the stomach. It can make you feel like your parenting was a contract, not a relationship. But here is a gentle truth for you to hold on to today. Love is a gift, not a loan. You gave what you could, when you could. If you are feeling a tightness in your chest when these conversations happen, listen to your body. That is your wisdom speaking. It is okay to say, "I love you, but I cannot carry this burden for you." You have carried enough groceries, enough sleepy toddlers, and enough worries to last a lifetime. Your shoulders deserve a rest. Before we move deeper into this, remember that stress affects us differently now than it did 30 years ago. Your blood pressure, your sleep quality, your digestion, all of these things are tied to your emotional peace. Talk to your doctor if anxiety is keeping you up at night, because your health is the most valuable asset you have left. The rush of modern life versus your wisdom. There is another situation that happens frequently. You might be calling just to share a story. Maybe you saw a bird at the feeder this morning, a bright red cardinal that reminded you of your own mother. Or maybe you just wanted to ask how to use a new setting on your phone, and the response you get is sharp, quick, and cutting. "I don't have time for this right now." Now, we all know the world is fast. We see it on the news. We see people rushing through the grocery store, staring at their screens, barely looking up to check for traffic in the parking lot. But when that hurry is directed at you, it feels personal. It feels like a dismissal of your existence. This is often called the relevance gap. It is the feeling that your timeline, which is slowed down to appreciate the smaller moments, is clashing with their timeline, which is running at a sprint. You might be sitting there with your cup of tea, ready to connect, and they are already mentally onto the next task. I want you to picture a scene. Imagine it is 1995. You are busy. You are cooking dinner. The laundry is piling up, and work was hard. But if your child tugged on your sleeve, you likely paused. Even for a second. Now that the roles are reversed, you crave that same pause. When you are told, "I don't have time," it is easy to internalize it. You might think, "I am boring," or "I am a nuisance." You might stop calling altogether. You might sit in your living room, watching the evening news, feeling a quiet sort of loneliness that is hard to explain to anyone else. But here is a different way to look at it. Your slow pace is not a weakness. It is a luxury you have earned. You have earned the right to watch the coffee drip slowly into the pot. You have earned the right to read the newspaper without rushing. If they are too busy to connect with that peace, it is a reflection of their chaos, not your worth. Try to find moments of connection elsewhere in your day. Maybe it is the brief chat with the mail carrier, or the lady at the bakery who knows you like the rye bread sliced thin. These small interactions are valid. They remind you that you are part of the community. You are seen. You do not have to beg for 5 minutes of time from anyone, even those you love most. The label of sensitivity, let's walk a little further down this path. There is a phrase that acts like a shield for people who do not want to take responsibility for their words. It is the phrase, "You are just being too sensitive." Maybe you expressed that a comment about your cooking hurt your feelings. Maybe you mentioned that you felt left out of a holiday plan. You spoke your truth. And instead of an apology, you received a label. You're too sensitive. You're making a big deal out of nothing. This is painful because it makes you question your own reality. You might go to bed that night replaying the conversation in your head. You might lie there in the dark, listening to the wind outside, wondering, am I too sensitive? Am I becoming difficult in my old age? Let's look at this clearly. As we age, our skin might get thinner, but our hearts often get stronger. We know what matters. We know that kindness matters. We know that respect matters. When you react to unkindness, you are not being too sensitive. You are being a human being with dignity. Think about the things you have weathered in your life. You have likely lived through economic recessions, perhaps the loss of a spouse, or the illness of a parent. You have handled colicky babies and teenage rebellions. You are tough. You are durable. So if something hurts you now, it is not because you are weak. It is because it hurts. When someone dismisses your feelings, they are essentially saying, "I do not want to do the work to understand you." It is a shortcut for them, but a roadblock for you. You do not need to argue with this label. You do not need to raise your voice. You can simply sit back in your chair, fold your hands, and know the truth about yourself. You can say to yourself, "I feel what I feel," and that is valid. You can go make yourself a warm sandwich, turn on your favorite radio program, and refuse to accept the label they try to stick on you. Your feelings are your internal compass. Do not let anyone break that compass. The generational divide. There is something else that often happens in conversations with adult children. It is the phrase, "You wouldn't understand." This one is tricky. It is usually said with a sigh. It might be about technology, or about the modern workplace, or about dating in the modern world. "Mom, Dad, you wouldn't understand. Things are different now." And yes, things are different. You might not know how to code software or how to use every app on the smartphone. But the human experience? The core of what it means to be alive. That hasn't changed in 1,000 years. You know what fear feels like. You remember the fear of your first job interview in 1968 or 1974. You know what heartbreak feels like. You know what it feels like to worry about money, to count pennies at the gas pump. The scenery changes, the gadgets change, but the emotions remain exactly the same. When you are dismissed with, "You wouldn't understand," it is a form of erasure. It suggests that your 70 or 80 years on this planet have taught you nothing of value for the modern world. And that is simply not true. I want you to think about the skills you have. Maybe you know how to fix a leaky faucet without calling a plumber. Maybe you know how to soothe a fever with a cool cloth and a calm voice. Maybe you know how to grow tomatoes from a patch of dirt. These are not small things. These are the things that sustain life. When you feel this gap widening, try not to force your advice on them. It often leads to more friction. Instead, retreat into your own competence. Engage in the things you do understand and that you are good at. Knit that blanket. Organize your workshop in the garage. Read the history books you enjoy. There is a great comfort in your own knowledge. You do not need them to validate your wisdom for it to be real. It is there, like the foundation of a house. Solid, unshakable. Whether they choose to tap into that resource is their decision, but do not let them convince you that the well is dry. The conditional love trap. Now, we must talk about something very delicate. It is the use of love as a bargaining chip. The phrase often sounds like, "If you really loved me, you would do this. If you really loved me, you would watch the grandkids this weekend, even though you are exhausted and your arthritis is flaring up. If you really loved me, you would help me with this down payment, even though it would drain your emergency savings." This is a hard one, because as parents, our instinct is always to say, "Of course I love you." We want to prove it. We have spent decades proving it. We proved it with school lunches, with rides to practice, with silent prayers for their safety. But love that requires a payment is not love. It is a transaction. And you are at a point in your life where you cannot afford expensive transactions, emotionally or physically. Let's take a practical example. Suppose it is a Friday. You have planned a quiet evening. You bought the ingredients for a nice soup. You are looking forward to watching a movie you used to love in the 80s. Then the phone rings with a demand disguised as a test of love. If you say no and they get angry, it reveals the condition. It hurts. It feels like a rejection. But setting a boundary is actually an act of self-love. It is saying, "I matter too." You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to protect your savings for your own future care. Everyone's situation is different, and you must make the best choices for your own household. But please know this: saying no does not erase the years of yes you have already given. If you find yourself giving in just to keep the peace, pay attention to how you feel afterward. Do you feel drained? Do you feel resentful? Do you wake up the next morning with a stiff neck or a headache? Your body keeps the score. Listen to it. You can love them deeply from a distance, without sacrificing your own security. The revision of history. This next part might be the hardest of all. It is when history gets rewritten. It is the phrase, "You were never there for me." You hear this, and your mind races back in time. You remember the school plays you sat through on hard metal folding chairs. You remember the nights you stayed up helping with science projects that involved glue and cardboard and glitter all over the kitchen table. You remember the sacrifices. So when an adult child says, "You were never there," it feels like a betrayal of your memory. It feels like someone is walking into the museum of your life and smashing the exhibits. Here is the difficult truth about memory. Two people can live through the exact same event and walk away with two completely different stories. Maybe you were working 2 jobs to put food on the table. To you, that was the ultimate act of being there. You were providing. You were making sure the heat stayed on during the winter of '86. But maybe to them, as a child, they just saw an empty chair at dinner. Both things can be true at the same time. You were working out of love, and they missed you out of love. Accepting this does not mean you have to agree with their harsh words. It just means you stop fighting the ghost of the past. You cannot go back and change the schedule you worked 30 years ago. You cannot go back and undo the mistakes you made when you were young and tired and trying your best. If this accusation comes up, try not to defend yourself with a list of everything you did. It rarely works. Instead, find peace in your own truth. You know you tried. You know you loved. You know the nights you prayed for them. Hold on to your own narrative. Write it down in a journal if you need to. I did my best. I love them. I am human. Let those words be your anchor when the waves of their anger try to push you around. You do not need to convince them to believe your truth. You only need to believe it yourself. The golden hour of self-care. We have talked about the hard things, the words that sting, the silences that stretch too long. Now, I want to pivot to something brighter. I want to talk about your time. I call it the golden hour, but it is really just the rest of your life. There comes a moment when you have to decide whose life you are living. Are you living as a supporting character in your child's drama? Or are you the main character in your own gentle story? Think about your daily routine. When you wake up in the morning, before the world rushes in, what do? Maybe you open the curtains to let the light in. Maybe you have a specific mug you like to use. The one with the chip on the rim that you refuse to throw away because it fits your hand perfectly. These small rituals are your sanctuary. They are the fortress that protects you from the hurtful words we discussed. When you focus on the simple pleasure of buttering toast, or the smell of rain on the pavement, or the sound of your favorite old song on the radio, you are reclaiming your peace. It is important to fill your life with things that do not judge you. A garden does not tell you that you are too sensitive. A pet cat or dog does not tell you that you owe them money. They only ask for a scratch behind the ears. A good book does not tell you that you wouldn't understand. It invites you in. If your relationship with your adult children is causing you constant pain, it is okay to gently lower the volume on that part of your life and turn up the volume on the things that bring you joy. It is not abandonment. It is preservation. You might decide to join a walking group at the local park. You might decide to finally sort through those boxes in the attic, not for them, but for you, to relive your own memories, to honor your own journey. Every time you choose a moment of peace over a moment of argument, you are winning. You are telling yourself that you matter. And that is a message you need to hear every single day. We have covered a lot of ground today. We walked through the heavy emotions of guilt, dismissal, and the changing roles of parenthood. It is not an easy road to walk, and I know that some of you might be wiping a tear from your eye right now. That is okay. It is good to release it. But I want you to remember one thing as you go about your day-to-day. You are a person of value. Your history, your sacrifices, your gray hairs, and your laugh lines, they all mean something. You do not have to accept words that make you feel small. You have grown too tall and stood too strong for that. I would love to hear from you in the comments. We have a wonderful community here, full of people who have walked in similar shoes. Tell me, which of the ideas we talked about today gave you the most comfort? Was it the idea of protecting your peace? Or perhaps the realization that you don't have to accept the guilt trip? Please type your thoughts below. I read them, and it helps me to know what helps you. And if you found this video helpful, if it felt like a warm hand on your shoulder, please consider subscribing to the channel. We are building a quiet, safe corner of the internet here, just for us. A place where we can talk about the real things, the hard things, and the beautiful things about getting older. Thank you for spending this time with me. Go make yourself a nice cup of tea, look out the window, and take a deep breath. You are doing just fine.